Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this afternoon I'm delighted to be joined by Chris McCowan. We are here, of course, to cover the game at Easter Road. What channel is it on? Well, it doesn't matter, Henrik, as long as you're tuning into your pre-match on Acsom. That's all we care about. And there you go. There's a nice wee backdrop. I heard it getting slagged off last week with you and Paddy, saying it looked like an old pair of pyjamas. And it does, let's be honest.
I do like it though. I do like it. It is nice. It is nice. It's actually it's when it's one of these things that kind of grows on you. But it did give me the kind of 1980s silk pajama vibes a little bit. Not in a bad way.
No. Hey, listen, it was acceptable in the 80s. Therefore, I'm still using it a wee bit like my hairdo. Right, here we go. Acsom are here, of course, today to talk about our upcoming fixture against Hibs at Easter Road. We are in Leith today, and it kicks off in 29 minutes' time. The teams are out. We'll be talking about the teams. Let us know your thoughts on that. All week, Chris, we were talking about how well Brendan had rotated his team. And I think that, it's all about, just tweaks. It's got to be tweaks. If you make half a dozen changes against a team like Hibs, who are 14 games unbeaten in all competitions, then it could become a banana skin. We know Easter Road, for example, is a venue that Brendan has struggled at in the past. His teams have struggled here. So I think it's good that there's been a few changes made, but also the fact that it's not wholesale changes is a positive for me.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've probably wrapped up the discussions on the European game now. Bayern, great moment for us, good summation of progress this season in Europe, but now we're back to the bread and butter, which is the domestic league. And what I like is that you're right, we've not seen wholesale changes. I mean, I know it's been a tough campaign up to this point, across all fronts, but what we do have today is we've got what I think is a really quite a strong lineup. Some key first team players, and the spine of the team is very much there. I think. But you've also got decent options on the bench. Maybe not quite as good as what we needed for Europe, but certainly domestically, and to get us across the next two fronts to send us towards that domestic treble. I think the bench and indeed the first team squad is looking pretty strong at the moment.
It definitely is. And by the way, you're talking there about players you can bring in domestically. That's not to say, Chris, that at some point you won't trust them on a European stage, because, I mean, I'm going to use a couple of examples here. I think, Liam Scales was a player that in the past you probably thought, he's a domestic player, but he'll not do it at Champions League kind of level. But he's gone into the Champions League this season. He's scored goals. He's won Man of the Match awards for his performances. So I think it's important to make sure that, for example, Luke McCowan's a player that at the moment it doesn't look as though Brendan Rodgers maybe trusted him enough to throw him in before the 90 minutes were up or the 94 minutes were up against Bayern Munich. But that's not to say he won't next season. So there's a progress here and a development for some of these guys. And I think it's great that Luke McCowan's starting today, because I do think he's got a part to play in Champions League football next season, Chris.
Yeah, he's a guy who I think he came in with very low expectations. Let's be honest, there wasn't probably many amongst us and maybe the wider support that thought he was going to be a player that's going to come in and make an immediate impact. Very much looked like on the surface of it a bit of a squad player, and I'll hold my hands up. I thought that the signing lacked at the time a bit of ambition. I'm more than happy to admit I was completely wrong on that, because I think from the first time he spoke about joining the club, the first appearance he made, the traits that he shows on the pitch, the energy level, the enthusiasm, he's a little bit raw at times. You can understand that. He's not played at this level, but he's came in, and for me, it doesn't matter what the expectation level is. He's coming in and doing everything you'd want and expect a Celtic player to do. As I say, he embodies a lot of those traits that the fans do enjoy, which is high energy, big enthusiasm, speaks very highly of the club, gives 100% whenever he's on the park. He's kind of one of those guys that embodies the old style Celtic player that you want to see, and I love that. Fans seem to have really taken to him, but they've not taken to him just by virtue of being a Celtic fan. They've taken to him by virtue of his performances so far. He's had a couple of maybe areas where, as I say, he's not performed quite as well. He's possession retention has been spoken about at times, but I just think that's a guy trying to bed his way into the team, find his footing, adapt to new players, new surroundings, etc. And I think you're right. I think the more exposure to minutes in games like this it will just put him in good stead for, the next European campaign. For me, his future's at Celtic. He's not a player that's just in there to make up the numbers. For me, he's a player who can come in and make a meaningful contribution to this team, absolutely domestically. And if he continues to play consistently at the level he's been playing at in recent matches, whenever he's had the opportunity, then I think he'll go on and make a good impact in Europe for us as well.
Yeah, he will. He definitely will. And I think that the signs are there, Chris. And by the way, I said he wasn't trusted to come on. I would caveat that by saying that perhaps he was being saved for extra time. Brendan Rodgers was probably looking at that bench.
That's
And
a fair point.
we say it's a weak bench, but if you were looking at someone to come on and either shore it up or give someone like Hatate a breather, then it probably would have been Luke McCowan at that stage. So yeah. I take back the trust. I don't think it's a trust issue with Brendan. It may well have been a tactical thing, and we didn't get an opportunity to put him in. Now, we've got the team here for anyone who's not seen it. Here we go. There's the starting 11, and there is Luke McCowan looking chuffed to bits. I'll get to the point, though, that we need to just stop saying, here's a guy living the dream and all that. Right, he's part of the squad now. He deserves to be here. You know what I mean? It's not like he's a raffle winner. So he goes into a game against Hibs at Easter Road. Right, Luke, like everybody else, you're under scrutiny for every single kick of the ball. Now, that isn't a bad thing, and that's not us being entitled. That's just what comes with playing like, for a club like Celtic. Now, the lineup is as follows, and we'll stick into some of the specifics and individuals in just a moment. So, Schmeichel in goals. Alistair Johnston, after his exertions against Bayern Munich, retains the right-back berth. I thought he might have been rested for Tony Ralston today. Left back, in comes Taylor. We were talking about trusting someone for European football, etc. It's interesting that Schlupp drops out, Taylor comes in. And I also thought Schlupp came across really well in the press conference yesterday when talking about Celtic. And I want to come back to that, Chris, because him and Brendan said a few things that I found quite interesting. Carter Vickers and Trusty, they are the American boys. They are the first pick unit at the back. All I can say about them, Chris, is that week on week, probably since he signed, it's been CCV plus A another. And now, and by the way, I get that him and Starfelt had a brilliant partnership, but there was still that kind of thinking that it was Carter Vickers was the man and Starfelt was a decent right-hand companion. I'm getting to the point now, and particularly in the two games against Bayern Munich, and I watched very closely when I watched them back a second time, as us Celtic Anoraks do, that Trusty's levels have come right up. They really have. They've increased. I know that there was that issue at Dens Park where everybody's seen what Brendan Rodgers said. You didn't have to be a lip reader to know what he said. But since then, I really do think that he has come up at several levels to the point where perhaps he even overshadowed Carter Vickers against Bayern Munich, Chris.
Yeah, and look, I think Carter Vickers is a player who's top quality, and I think when you play alongside top quality players, you have to elevate your game, right? You have to show that you belong as part of that, that partnership. At the moment, Carter Vickers and Trusty, I mean, crikey, they're a better partnership than America's got in the White House at the moment. Let's be honest, they're the only Americans I'll be trusting at this stage. But no, Trusty, I think you've got to remember, it's still relatively early in his Celtic tenure. And we always talk about players they almost need this minimum of about 6 months to really bed in. But what I think you're seeing with Trusty now, with the games that he's playing, the elevation in his performance. And there was one element I really liked about Trusty. He had a real shocker, if you remember, some games back, where, the week is, what reference that Brendan Rodgers gave him. Now, I sometimes think the way you measure a player's attributes and his quality is how he responds to things like that. Yeah. And I think, Trusty's reaction to what I'm sure was not only criticism that we saw on the side of the park, I'm sure in the dressing room he was given both barrels for his performance. But what you're looking for is a player to, pull his socks up, stick his chest out and actually elevate his game for the next opportunity he gets. And I think Trusty's done that. He hasn't dropped out the team. He hasn't, gone off in a sulk. He's lifted his game. And I think there's elements of his game that we pointed to early in his tenure. Sometimes his anticipation of the ball dropping over his head, occasionally a wee bit reckless. He looks more and more assured now. He's starting to look more assured, and he's starting to look like he's comfortable as you say, in that back line, and particularly the partnership with Carter Vickers. So, yeah, I mean, I think you do still give credit to Carter Vickers, because I do think a player of his quality elevates all the players around him. Probably a great teammate to have. But you've also got to give praise to the guys on their individual merits. And I think guys like Trusty really raised his game. You look at Alistair Johnson, I think, has massively raised his game this season. I mean, he's a phenomenal player for us at the moment. Greg Taylor, I know there's speculation about his future, but, he's been a huge part of the success this season, done some great stuff from that left-back position. I know we talk about his defensive traits, but, he adds a real dimension going forward. And, I never want to underestimate that. And, going back to the player we were talking about earlier, McCowan playing alongside guys like Carter Vickers, playing alongside guys like Callum McGregor, the quality of guys like Kuhn and Maeda, another up-and-comer like Engels, these guys will benefit from playing amongst such quality. So it's only a good thing at the moment that we've got these real top players in the squad, established players, and then you've got the guys who are just coming through, either new to the club or getting to that point in their career, and they're benefiting from playing alongside these players.
This is the thing with introducing new players, be that new signings or players from the academy. To do that in a winning side is absolutely ideal. It's really difficult, of course, to introduce people into a side that is up against it. And I think that when you look at the records in Angie's first season, it's all the more impressive for the fact that they were coming into a side that was low in confidence. And virtually, I say virtually because there was one or two exceptions, but virtually every player was a success. And straight off the bat, they hit the ground running. But you're right, we do have a bit of a comfort blanket in that you're coming into a winning side here, Chris. Therefore, like Kuhn, you can take a wee bit of time if you need it to settle into this side. We're not going to write you off. And I think Trusty probably got the shock of his life when he came to Celtic. He's never been in an environment where, first team environment that is, I know he was at Arsenal as a youngster, where every single game is a must win. Doesn't matter if you're playing Wraith Rovers in the Cup or Bayern Munich in Europe, every single game is treated with the same kind of, it's demands, it's standards. That's what it is. People keep going on about an entitled support. Absolutely not. And the demands and the standards are only there because the club has put in 25 years of successful performances. So it's something I'm glad is there. And I'm pretty sure that if you're at Celtic, you need to have that mentality about you. Before I move into the midfield, I want to talk about the press conference yesterday, because they not only interviewed Brendan Rodgers, but obviously Jeff Schlupp was the player who was answering the questions. Now, on the Brendan one, what I found very interesting, Chris, was the fact that whenever one of the reporters, and it was clear the reporters were going to ask about Europe, they were going to ask about Bayern Munich, they were going to ask about Champions League, they were going to ask about recruitment. He didn't want to talk about any of that.
No.
He just said, we're now out of the competition and we're focusing on Hibs. To paraphrase it. He was not interested in talking about recruitment, all that kind of stuff. Leave that to the summer. We now have a league to win, a league to win, a Scottish Cup to win. But again, it's this laser focus because, in the previous 2 weeks, I spoke about this incredible focus that Brendan had, and it came across in the press conferences where it was less jocular, if you like. It was just like, there was a couple of questions where he was very bold and to the point, not quite one-word answers, but not far off it. And there was a focus, and I thought that, and I've heard this a lot, that the manager, the manager's approach and his confidence and his attitude just bleeds into the team. And I felt that it did against Bayern Munich on 2 occasions in the last fortnight. He's now putting that behind him, and he says, look, we went back to the hotel, we had a beer, we had a wine, up in the morning, training, and then back on the flight. So it's an incredible laser focus that he has, and he's now looking at this game right here as the most important game in the calendar.
I think, I sometimes feel we don't give the manager enough credit for what you see on the park and certainly the success that we've had. We're very quick to praise the players, and rightly so. We praise, the development of Nicholas Kuhn, how he's taking his game to another level. Alistair Johnson, that we've just been speaking about, the signings of players like Kasper Schmeichel and Jeff Schlupp, for all the cynicism sometimes around, the signings as well. But what we've seen, I think, over the course of this season, and, this includes Europe, but domestically as well, is you've got, a real confidence and assurance, a desire to win, working hard for the 90 plus minutes, Showing discipline now in Europe. We've seen evolutions throughout this team, and I think what you're starting to see. You're starting to see this team's identity coming from the manager and the way he wants to play and the way he sets his team up and the expectations and the standards that he sets. I'd always go back to something he said earlier on in the season when he was talking about young players. I think it was Wilson Lawal and Odin Holm. And I felt as though he was setting a challenge out when he said, look, there's expectations and the standards and levels you need to be here. And I thought that's saying a challenge. That's saying, look, it doesn't matter how talented you think you are. It doesn't matter how much praise you're getting. I set the standard. I'm the manager. And if you're not going to hit that standard, you're not in the team. And I thought that's a sign of someone who is setting a very high level of expectation amongst these players. And I think for a player, if you're a professional footballer, I would imagine, I can't say this with any genuine experience, but I would think that you elevate your game because the manager expects you and requires you to, and he's bringing in quality in different positions, including your position. So you're looking over your shoulder and you're thinking, I've got to go out there and perform. I've got to go out there. And I have to perform not just against Bayern Munich, but I have to go out there and play against, Wraith Rovers or Falkirk at times. I have to go out there every single game, and I've got to hit those levels. And I think that comes from the manager. And I think you're now starting to see it come across in Brendan's press conference. I think last year there was a lot of contrition about the manager to an extent.
Yeah.
There seemed to be a lot of contrition, a lot of, trying to do the right things, trying to show that he was back, maybe still having a lot to prove. This season, he looks like, this is me, this is my club, this is my team. I'm the manager. Well, I'm still here. I'm the manager, and what I say goes. And I kind of like that in a manager. It shows ownership, it shows accountability, and it shows he is focused on Celtic.
100% focused. Yeah, big shout out actually to a friend of Acsom, Tommy Sheridan. It's been brought to my attention that Tommy's big sister passed away this morning. So thoughts and prayers with Tommy and all his family as well. I wasn't aware until you made me aware of that, Chris. So big shout out to Tommy. Hope you're well, pal. Hope you're well. Mr. C, expected one or two more changes, but happy there isn't. Not the most nailed on win, but still expect a win. 7-0 incoming. That would be nice. Listen, we're up against the Hibs side here who are in good form. The other fixtures today, Aberdeen are playing Kilmarnock, Dundee United face Motherwell, Rangers against St Mirren, Ross County against Dundee. And the fixture tomorrow, of course, is St Johnstone against Hearts. The league table shows that Celtic are 13 points ahead with superior goal difference. And Hibs are sitting in fifth. But what a turnaround it's been since David Gray came to the football club. Brilliant. And again, Brendan Rodgers spoke about this yesterday. He said that from time to time, clubs have to give managers time. And when he was asked about David Gray earlier this season, that's what he said. And Hibs gave him time, and it's paid off. Donny, tiny hands. Neither went to go 16 clear and add more pressure on Sevco. Jason Lee, Yang to score today, says Jason. We'll get to the forwards in a moment. Thomas Burns, you came across well on Sky. Well, Thomas, thanks for saying that, because basically what happened, I don't know how long ago it was, actually, a few years ago, a guy called Charlie Patterson, who's no longer on Sky, asked me to appear because he wanted a fan's perspective. And I thought at the time, a lot of Celtic fans don't like the kind of perspective that they get on the mainstream. So why not go on and skew the narrative that they have set up in the agenda and give a fan's view, my fan's view, not the entirety of the Celtic fan base across the globe's fans' view, and also give us a wee boost on Acsom so that it's up there and people can see that we're serious about what we do. So thank you for that, because in the initial stages of doing stuff like that, I got dog's abuse, I think it's safe to say, for days and days on end. Now it's become normalised, Chris. It's normal now for the mainstream to ask someone from a fans network or a fans platform to give their views, and nobody seems to care now. So thank you very much, Thomas. Quinny, always a pleasure to see you, my friend. And go and check Quinny's YouTube channel out. I was watching it yesterday. I did give you a thumbs up. I didn't put in a quote or a comment, rather, because you were talking about football outside of the Celtic bubble. And my knowledge is not the best. Jungle Lion, there would not be a bulletin without a comment from you. Just keep the steamroller rolling and let the cheats have their 5 minutes of fame this week. You know this? We'll leave it right there, JL, because they think, because we are reacting, actually laughing at the news, that we are somehow in fear of what's just around the corner. Here we go, Ridiculizer. doesn't understand why professional athletes pay tens of thousands of pounds a week, can't be expected to perform 2 games of football a week anyway. A modern nonsense to mollycoddle them. Now, I can see both sides of this. The first side is Roy Aitken. So we were with Roy Aitken fairly recently in December. He joined us at a live event in Paris.
Could still be playing. Yeah, could still be playing, the big man. See, it's a giant of a man.
You know what was very interesting? He said that in 15 years in the Celtic first team, he missed 2 games through injury. 2 games through injury. He missed quite a few through his suspension, by the way, but 2 through injury in 15 years. So you've got that set, and that was a harder game back then, a more physical game. You know, they actually had to wear shin pads back then because they didn't want to get their calves snapped in half. Now, you fast forward to this point now here, and I get what you're saying, but at the same time, the physical aspect of a game now is all monitored. It's all monitored, Chris, because of the science that has, evolved, and rightly so. And what we need to do is we need to look after these guys. We need to look after them as athletes. And you know what? A lot of the time, the rotation is happening because the big computer's telling us, by the way, he has done his yards this week. He needs a rest. Give him 25 minutes. And that's why the laptop, that's why the iPad man, Strachan, is in there, because he is monitoring all this. They're all running about with their heart monitors. So, yeah, I get it. Old school. I'm a bit old school myself. But at the same time, talking to the people at football clubs, etc., it absolutely is necessary, regardless of what they're getting paid, to rotate them. And what you don't want is you don't want to burn players out. You know what? You don't want to burn them out. And that's why a lot of people have been a bit concerned about Callum McGregor. The amount of games that he plays for Celtic. And of course, he starts again today. And it's simply because of what we're saying. Brendan Rodgers is focused on this game. This is a big challenge. And it would be lovely to be able to rest McGregor, but there's no guarantee you win this game without him.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I always think a manager now, particularly if you're a manager at Celtic with the expectation level, you should go out to try and win every single game. There's, it's just all about the next game. Now, you can be strategic about it, right? If you're playing a game from a lower division, then you might give opportunities to some of the less established players. But Hibs are in our division. They are a direct, I guess what you say, a direct competitor. They're not Queen's Park, for example. Sorry. But,
any opportunity, mate. Drop it.
Sorry, not sorry. To be honest, but yeah, I like the fact that the manager is prepared to put the bulk of his strongest 11 out there where he can, and say, guys, this is it. We're back on it. It's, as I said earlier, it's the bread and butter. The fans are coming along, away fans today coming along to watch us. Go out there, get a performance. And look, if we get 2-3 goals up maybe by half time, then, you might look to rest players like Callum McGregor. But I also think you've got to look at the players themselves. I mean, Callum McGregor doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who's going to go to the manager and ask for a rest. I think he's a man that's prepared to be that kind of slightly old school Roy Aitken type, pull his socks up and say, well, unless I'm injured, I'm going to declare myself fit and ready to play. And I think there's a few of those individuals. Dyson Maeda probably, has probably done about 18 laps around the park by this point before he goes on, given his, his level of fitness. So I get the point that Ridiculizer's making, that you want players to be fit enough and play week on week, and this is their job, and they get the best training, they get the best training facilities and resources that the money can buy, and they are at the peak of their fitness. But they're also very, very important over the course of the whole season. And I think, it is important that the manager manages them so that we have the best possible chance to be successful in all fronts. And just because the European campaign is over for this year, doesn't suddenly mean that all these guys, suddenly drop down and say, right, that's it, feet up, let the youngsters come in, or let the second choice players come in. No. This is your primary competition. This is what you have to win year on year. This is what the fans expect. We've built up a good lead over our nearest rivals because we are the best team in the country, because we play like the best team in the country, and because our players perform better than any other team in the country. And that's the level that we have to maintain, and that's the level that the fans expect.
Yeah, without a doubt. And when you're looking at McGregor, you think to yourself, let's get this game won and then rest his legs. Engels, I've waxed lyrical all season about Arnie Engels. I think he's turned a lot of people's opinions around on him, and a big part of that is probably his performances in the Champions League. It was spoken about and highlighted by Brendan Rodgers as well during yesterday's press conference. Now, up front, we have Nicholas Kuhn and Maeda, two guys neck and neck for Player of the Year at the moment. Phenomenal input and contribution to every single competition we've been in during the campaign. And then Ida returns to the starting 11. But what that does is it gives us a very strong bench. And I'm going to start actually with Jude Bonner on the bench. I hope we get to see him, says Rivers. I hope we get to see Bonner get some minutes. Now, by the way, I've already mentioned Quinny. Kudos to Quinny. Quinny gets along to some of the B team games, and he has confirmed that Bonner plays in midfield. He's got a good eye for a pass. Looks pretty clever whenever he has watched them. So thanks for that, Quinny. Thanks for that. And it would be good at some point to see him getting some minutes. I absolutely agree with you, River C. And now on the subject of that bench, Sinisalo is on there alongside Scales, Jota, Yang, Schlupp, Kenny, Hatate, and Ralston. And I think the big thing during the week there, Chris, and I listened with interest to your post-match on my way back from Glasgow, it's really just the depth, isn't it? I mean, I'm looking at the bench there at the moment. We've got a couple of injuries in James Forrest and Paulo Bernardo. And if they were in, you're probably saying, well, maybe Bonner would perhaps drop out. Maybe Kenny, but I mean, I'm saying maybe Kenny would drop out. And you're looking at that bench, you're thinking, yeah, it's strong. But when you get to the European level and you've got more subs on that bench, it shows you just how wafer thin really the squad is. And, as well as replacing anyone who leaves in the summer or bolstering the first 11, I think you've also got to bolster the squad. And I think that's why Luke McCowan's been such a brilliant signing for us this season.
Yeah, you're looking football's not just about your top first 11 now. It really isn't. It hasn't been for some time. Where I think, you look at players like Jota, for example, Jeff Schlupp, who's come in, and is on the bench tonight. They're players who, when they come in, you don't see the drop in quality in the team. When they come in for, whether it be Kuhn or Maeda, whether Schlupp comes in for Taylor or maybe even comes into midfield, you're not dropping quality for me. You've got guys on the bench who are the equivalent quality, maybe even for some conditions, maybe even better than the guys who are starting week on week. That's what we saw with Bayern Munich. And sorry to go back to the European game, but at one point, and we said it on the post-match, they brought in, Kingsley Coman, Leroy Sané, and Alphonso Davies, and I shudder to think what they would go for in transfer values. When you're bringing on players like that, your quality isn't dropping. That's the model that Celtic have to try and replicate. Now, financially, nowhere near it, right? But what we're looking at is we look at our squads, we look at the successful areas of our squad, and we've got to look at, okay, who can we bring in that when they're called upon, whether they're called upon to start as part of a rotation or they come in as substitute appearances, we're not seeing a substantial drop-off in quality. And I think when we've had players in the past, Luis Palma, and no disrespect to the boy, but that's kind of what we saw. Yang, for all his efforts, and he's really trying to do well, and he's doing a lot of what the manager's asked him to do, and fair play to him, and I hope he continues to bring his level up. But when he first came in, again, a significant drop-off in quality. When Jota left the first time, impossible to replace that quality, and now we're lucky enough to have him back. And we've got the same issue with Kyogo now away. It's like, well, can Ida step up? But okay, what happens to Ida? Who's the backup to Ida now? Is it Kenny? Well, we don't know because we haven't really seen enough of him to make that assessment yet. So it is important, particularly for those key areas, that we're not just bringing in numbers, we're not bringing in projects. I think there's a place for some projects and some players that you can give minutes to and try and elevate, and maybe in a season or two. But as you've said earlier, the expectation level is so high week on week at this club that we need players who, when they come in, as I say, as part of a rotation, as part of a bench, you're not seeing that drop off. You're actually able to maintain that consistent level of quality. So there's certainly a couple of individuals on that bench that do that. Jota, Schlupp, obvious ones. Liam Scales, another one. Tony Ralston, safe pair of hands or boots, as it were, to come in. But there's a couple of unknowns on there. Yang still got a bit to prove for me. Kenny, the same. Sinisalo, difficult one for a goalkeeper, right? Particularly when you've got Casper playing. But we need a few more. Jamesy Forrest might come back and give us that for a season or two, but I think big recruitment coming up.
Yep, I think we do the same as we did last summer in terms of numbers. There's the start 11 for Hibs: Smith, Miller, Ahora, Boyle, Iredale, Cadden, Bowie. There you go. Mariah Welsh, Triantis, I thought I said Trialist, Campbell and Rocky. Yes, I'm blind as a bat, and I did have to really scrunch my eyes up to get the team out there. Well. But yeah, they will. I mean, we spoke yesterday to Alan that there will be a big task today to get through them and to ensure that we get that victory that takes us 16 points ahead at the top of the league. It's 30 minutes gone. It's about to kick off. Give me a prediction, Chris McCowan.
I think I don't believe too much in the European hangover. I think we've got enough quality about us, but Hibs have had a good season, so I'm going to go for a hard-fought 3-1.
3-1, I'll take that. Last word to Martin Anderson. Just want to share, I had cancer since I was a teenager. I've just recovered a year ago, and Big Roy Aitken and Danny McGrain visited regularly. I have the utmost respect. Hail, hail, boys. Well, I'm delighted to hear that you're in recovery, Martin. And you know what? Roy Aitken, Danny McGrain, just class human beings. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. Go and watch the game and join us at half-time on A Celtic State of Mind.